The first night in the cabin, I heard footsteps in the snow outside my window. Slow, careful, deliberate. I told myself it was an animal. That's what people always say. But animals don't stop directly beneath your window and stand there listening to you breathe. The wind howled through the trees like something screaming through broken teeth. The temperature had dropped fast, below 0 by midnight. My phone had no signal. The road was buried under fresh snow. I was completely alone. Then the footsteps moved, not away, closer, right up to the wall beside my bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I watched frost creep across the glass as something on the other side exhaled slowly, patiently, as if it already knew where I was and was taking its time. I had rented the cabin online. No reviews, no owner photo, just an address deep in the mountain woods. It was cheaper than anywhere else, and I needed somewhere to disappear for a week. The place looked abandoned when I arrived. Snow swallowed the porch steps. The door groaned when I pushed it open. Inside, everything smelled like dust, wood rot, and old, cold air. One room, a fireplace, a narrow bedroom. No neighbors, just forest pressed against every wall. There was a generator outside for power. It worked. Barely. The lights flickered like dying heartbeat monitors. I told myself the isolation would be peaceful. But isolation doesn't feel peaceful at night. It feels like being buried alive with your eyes open. By the time darkness fell, the woods felt too close, like they were listening. The first sound came just after midnight. A single knock. Soft. Careful. 3 slow taps against the front door. I froze on the bed, heart flooding so hard I thought it might give me away. I waited for a voice, for footsteps, for anything that made sense. Nothing followed. Minutes passed. Then another knock. 3 taps again. I whispered to myself, "Go away." My breath fogged the air. The fireplace had died down to glowing embers. The cold crawled under the blankets and wrapped around my spine. Then I heard it, dragging, something being pulled slowly across the porch boards just outside the door. Not heavy enough to be a body, too deliberate to be the wind. The sound circled the cabin once and stopped directly outside my bedroom wall. The frost on the window distorted everything outside into pale blue shadows. I couldn't see movement, only darker shapes shifting between the trees. Then something touched the glass. Not a hand. Knuckles pressed from the outside, slowly, one by one. The ice cracked in thin white fractures around each point of pressure. I watched in frozen disbelief as the pressure increased, as if whoever or whatever was testing how thick the barrier was. A whisper slid through the tiny cracks in the frame. "I can see you." The voice was wrong. Too close. Too dry. Like it hadn't been used in a long time. I stayed perfectly still, my heart hammered in my ears. The whisper came again, closer this time, pressed against the glass. "You're warm." The knuckles vanished. The footsteps returned. This time, they moved toward the back of the cabin, toward the only door without a lock. I slid off the bed slowly, every muscle screaming at me to run, yet my legs barely worked. The floorboards were ice cold and loud. Each step felt like a gunshot in the silence. The back door was just a thin slab of warped wood, no deadbolt, only a weak chain across the middle. I could already see shadows moving through the frosted window in the door. Something rattled the handle. Once. Twice. Then, a voice again, right on the other side. "I'm freezing!" The words trembled like someone trying to cry. I didn't answer. The handle stopped moving. The shadow leaned closer to the glass until its shape filled the window. I could make out the vague outline of a head tilted sideways, as if it were studying how a human stands. "I just need the heat," it whispered. The chain started to tighten. The lights flickered violently. Once. Twice. Then the entire cabin plunged into darkness. The humming of the generator outside cut off like a dying breath. Silence flooded in, thick and absolute. Then I heard it. Footsteps again. Inside the cabin. Slow steps on the floorboards. Closer than before. I backed toward the fireplace, grabbing the cold iron poker with shaking hands. My breath came out in sharp white clouds now. Without the generator, the cabin cooled instantly, like the cold was being invited inside. A shadow stretched across the wall. Tall. Too tall. It bent at the wrong angles. The voice drifted through the dark. "It's warmer in you." Something wet touched my ankle. I screamed and swung blindly. The poker struck nothing solid, only a rush of freezing air that burned my skin like dry ice. The back door burst open with a crack that sounded like splintering bone. Snow exploded into the cabin in a blinding white cloud. I ran past it into the dark, barefoot, lungs on fire, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. The cold hit me like knives. The woods swallowed me immediately. Trees blurred past as I sprinted through knee-deep snow, every step stealing more of my strength. Behind me, I heard it moving too, but faster than I should be able to hear. Its breathing was wrong. Too many breaths, layered on top of each other. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My legs went numb. I tripped over hidden roots. I felt something rush past my shoulder with enough force to tip me sideways into the snow. "Don't stop," it whispered from everywhere. I crawled instead, nails tearing, blood hot against the cold. The trees suddenly opened into a frozen clearing. Moonlight reflected off ice like a field of broken mirrors. In the center stood a small structure I hadn't seen on the map. A shed, half buried in snow. I dragged myself inside and slammed the door. The hinges shrieked loudly in the silence. Inside was darker than pitch. I fumbled for a latch, found one by instinct, and locked it. For a moment, there was only my gasping breath. Then the shadow passed over the thin walls of the shed. Something circled slowly, dragging fingers along the outside. The wood bowed inward with each touch. "I had a cabin too," the voice said softly. "Long time ago." The temperature dropped further. Frost bloomed across the inside walls like spreading veins. "You took mine," it whispered. The floor beneath me cracked, the ice below the shed gave way, and I fell straight down into black water. The shock stole the air from my lungs instantly. The water was beyond cold. It was pain, liquid knives slicing through muscle and bone. I thrashed upward, slamming into solid ice. No opening, no light. Only darkness and my own bubbles clawing upward and vanishing. My limbs slowed. My fingers went stiff. My vision blurred into pulsing gray stars. Then something moved beneath me. Hands wrapped around my ankles. Not pulling, holding. The voice came from below the ice, perfectly clear in the water. "Stay." The grip tightened. My body arched as panic exploded through me. I kicked, but my legs barely responded. My lungs burned, my chest convulsed. I felt myself weakening. The last thing I saw in the dark water was a pale face beneath me, eyes wide and unblinking, smiling as if it had finally found its warmth. Then the cold filled my lungs. I don't know how long I drifted in that black water. Time lost meaning when my body stopped fighting. I expected darkness to take me completely. Instead, I woke up. I was back in the cabin, lying on the bed. The fireplace was glowing warmly. The generator hummed softly outside. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then I tried to move. My body wouldn't respond. I couldn't feel my heartbeat. I couldn't feel my breath. I looked down and saw frost spreading outward from my chest, freezing the blanket solid. My reflection stared back at me from the window glass, pale, hollow, unmoving. Outside, I saw fresh footprints in the snow. Someone was walking up to the cabin, slowly, carefully. Then I heard my own voice drift through the cracks of the door from the outside. I'm freezing, and I realized the cabin never lets anyone leave.